Air pollution is one of the greatest public health challenges of our time. The truth is that as we speak in this place and beyond, people are being poisoned by filthy, unsafe air. Indeed, today the Mayor of London has issued a high air pollution alert across the capital. A DPF, diesel particulate filter, captures and stores dangerous emissions. It can be found at the back of a diesel exhaust system and can reduce emissions from a vehicle by around 80%. We now know that a faulty DPF, in some instances, is responsible for the same amount of pollution as a 3-lane, 360-mile-long traffic jam when compared to cars that have working filters. That's the distance, Mr. Hollowbone, between my constituency of Huddersfield to Land's End in Cornwall. And it's a truly terrifying fact which must spur us on to identify and remove dangerous faulty filters. There's just one faulty filter in one car can spread that poison.
On that point.
Indeed.
I think the Honourable Gentleman has been quite insistent and persistent in doing this. So he referred to the if the DPF is a faulty, a single vehicle can do the very thing. He says a 360-mile long traffic jam. Does he not agree that whilst we are putting fresh restrictions on business and manufacturing, there's a simple and effective way of cutting emissions? And the Honourable Gentleman is going to put forward the ideas in relation to that one.
That intervention is absolutely right, and I shall addressing his point particularly during my remarks. Increased particulate matter testing during the MOT would ensure we identify faulty DPFs that are not picked up with the current testing regime. And I'm pleased, Mr. Hollowbone, I'm pleased to see the government is wanting to adopt particulate number testing in its open consultation on the MOT that was published last week. As chair of the Westminster Commission for Road Air Quality, we've been campaigning on this issue for a long time, and it does look as though we're making some progress at last. For if the government is looking for a legislative vehicle, my motor vehicle test diesel particulate filters bill is due for a second reading on the 24th of March. So I'm very happy to share it with the Minister and share all credit with the Minister if he's so minded. But before I speak more about these changes we can make to the MOT, it's worth dwelling on the life-changing harmful effects of air pollution that my bill would help to mitigate. It's estimated up to 36,000 people die prematurely each year from the effects of air pollution in our country. The total cost to the NHS and social care will be 1.5 billion by 2025 and 5.1 billion by 2035, Mr. Hollowbone. Indeed.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for giving way. He's making a really important point. He will know that today is the birthday, would have been the birthday, of Ella Kissy-Deborah, the child who tragically died aged 9 and was the first person to have air pollution as the cause of death on her death certificate. He will know that I'm trying to take in a bill around clean air. Does he agree with me that the government's current targets for PM 2.5 are utterly unambitious and they ought to be adopting those targets that the WHO put forward in 2021 of 5 milligrams per cubic metre?
I was in an SI with the Honourable Lady only yesterday, and I can assure her that that is our intention, and I totally agree with the measure of ambition that we think has got to be raised from all of us, as well as from this government. So the total cost to the NHS, to the NHS from this plague of dirty, filthy air, so the cost of the NHS and social care will be extreme, and the cost of inaction is fatal to people up and down our country and the services they rely on. A public health priority must be to reduce levels of particulate matter in the atmosphere. Particulate matters are tiny, invisible solids and liquids that can permeate our bodies. They have a harmful impact on human health and mainly come from vehicles and plant equipment and industry. And Mr. Hollowbone, you're too young to remember the 1950s and the smog. Smog, people took action about because you could see it, you could breathe it, you could smell it. It was everywhere. It was disgusting. This poisonous one is even more poisonous, but it's invisible. And this is why it is so important. Now, two of the key measures, Mr. Hollowbone, are PM2.5s and PM10s. And that is bits of matter smaller than 2.5 and 10 micrometers in diameter. I'm sorry this is a bit technical, but the danger of small matter, such small matter, is that it can enter our bloodstream, which in turn causes irreversible damage to our respiratory system and other organs. This has been the case for those 36,000 individuals in the UK this year and every year, whose premature deaths are attributed to air pollution. And it's also been known to contribute to asthma and a variety of breathing difficulties. I was many of us have the privilege of hearing astoundingly good people in this place, visiting speakers. And Sir Stephen Holgate addressed a group of us who care about air pollution. And I remember sitting up, Mr. Hollowbone, when he said, not only all these dreadful things happen to pregnant women, children, the elderly, but it actually also, these impurities in the air accelerate the ageing process. That galvanised me to some extent, Mr. Hollowbone, in terms of my keen interest. From children to the elderly, air pollution has life-changing consequences. The Australian government has found that elderly adults are more likely to be affected by unclean air. It can cause strokes, heart disease and lung disease. Air pollution not only harms people in every community in the country, but us right here in the parliamentary estate. Since June, I've been recording air pollution in Parliament with a handheld air quality monitor and a large state-of-the-art device in my Portcullis House, 5th floor. Levels of air pollution are consistently here in this estate above the World Health average. The average level of PM2.5 on the estate was 5.3 micrograms per cubic centimetre. That's above the World Health limit of 5. More worryingly, there were significant spikes with the highest daily reading coming in at 8.65 micrograms per cubic centimetre. And during the summer heat, there was a 14-day period where average daily levels of PM2.5 remained at 5.3 and above. That's remarkable, Mr. Hollowbone. In my office, nitrogen dioxide levels were on average 4 times above the WHO guidelines. In the entire monitoring period, levels of nitrogen dioxide were never at safe levels. And, excuse me, 2 seconds, Mr. Hollowbone. I have a very dry mouth due to a medical condition, so your patience is very much appreciated. In my office, nitrogen dioxide levels were on average 4 times above WHO guidelines. In the entire monitoring period, the levels of nitrogen dioxide were never at safe levels. Much of the blame for this air pollution on the estate across the country is from vehicles and the pollution they pump out, often through a faulty DPF. But as a country, Mr. Hollowbone, there's some chinks of daylight and good news. As a country, we've moved slowly in the right direction. In 2014 and 2018, MOT Test became marginally more rigorous to ensure the proper working of these filters. We still have progress to make on this issue, however, but the debate has come at a topical time as the Department of Transport released its consultation period last week. And I'm glad the government has recognised the need for further progress in emissions testing, and they understand the particulate number testing is indeed the right thing to do. Governments across Europe have successfully implemented these tests. The Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, all adopting the higher standards. The Dutch, using a very sensitive particulate technology, are making very great progress, and it's set at 250,000 particles per cubic centimetre, and this will mean that much tougher. But the Dutch have, we have 10 times as many vehicles with problems with particulates than the Netherlands. So consider the fact that the UK has over 10 times more diesel vehicles on the road than the Dutch, and it's plain to see we would make significant progress if we followed our European partners. I want to just finish lastly, Mr. Hollowbone, asking the Minister if he could share any data that his department has preparing prepared on the cost of introducing the testing. We know it will be, there will be an expense. We know that testing stations and garages will have to bear its expense, but the equipment is not that expensive now, and it's getting cheaper. And we also know it will be an individual cost to have a more rigorous MOT, but we believe that investment, whether it comes from the government with support, direct support or grants, or whether it actually comes this vast vehicle manufacturers that across Europe that could contribute. But the studies I have seen demonstrated that fit for purpose monitoring is available and affordable. Additionally, making the test stricter will result in more failures. Failed vehicles will be a problem, but in that transition, we will see real change. We'll take older, more polluting vehicles off the roads for good and replace them with electric and even hydrogen vehicles are much healthier for all of us. And as we wait for the next steps of the MOT consultation, can I urge the Minister to follow through on his department's ambitions, particularly matter testing in the MOT would make an enormous difference in the fight to reduce air pollution. In our New Year reception for the Westminster Commission, it was an honour to hear from Rosamund Kissy-Deborah, who, as my honourable friend has just said, whose daughter Ella was the first person in the UK to have air pollution registered as a cause of death. Today would have been her 19th birthday, and I am honoured that we have the opportunity to remember her today. And Mr. Hollowburn, as a father and a grandfather, it's impossible not to be moved by Ella's story, a young child whose life was taken far too early. Sadly, Ella's not the only one. There are many more children like her who are currently at risk from the toxic fumes engulfing our urban centres. It's for people like Ella that the government must follow through on their proposal to tackle the filthy air is so poisonous and harmful. I was speaking last week in Harrogate, Mr. Hollowburn, with a professor of chemistry from York University and said, if you want to know where people are breathing in the worst, most poisonous air, look at the poorest areas of our country. And I'll finish by saying, air pollution is an invisible, insidious, silent killer. And we have a unique opportunity now to make a small change that would make a great difference. So my ask to the Minister and other members is, let us take this step together and move closer to achieving a goal which we could share all across this House, that our children, grandchildren, friends, family and loved ones are united in their desire, the inalienable right to breathe clean air.
The question is that this House has considered